Welcome to Let's Get Real to Heal. I'm Dr. Joelle Samaha. This is a space where we go beyond surface level conversations and explore what truly shapes our lives from within. If you're here for the first time, take a moment to subscribe and stay connected to these conversations. Today's conversation is a powerful one. My guest was once given less than a 5% chance of survival, a moment that could have ended everything, but instead became the beginning of a profound transformation. What happens to your identity when you come that close to losing your life? What shifts in the way you see yourself, your body, your purpose? And more importantly, how do you rebuild, not just physically, but emotionally and mentally? Today, we're exploring the connection between the mind, the body, and the subconscious, the journey from survival to alignment, and what it really means to live and perform from a place of coherence. Ravi, I'm really glad to have you here today. Take me back to that moment where things shifted. How old were you and how would you describe that moment?
So, firstly, thank you very much for having me here. It was an incredibly surreal moment when my life completely changed because from what I understood, I lived a normal life, working every single day, but something didn't feel right. I was 25 at the time and going to work every single day. And funnily enough, it was just the one day that I decided not to drive. It was the one day that one of my friends said, I'll pick you up and I'll take you to work.
Interesting.
Right. It was just the first day. And I never normally opt for not driving. I'm always the driver anyway. That day, everything was normal until the end of the day when I started to get some pains, not really understanding what was going on. And as I sat in my friend's car, something just didn't feel right. So I asked my friend, look, just pause here. I'm just going to go to the toilet. And on my way to the inside of the building was when I just collapsed.
Oh.
And obviously at that point, I had no idea what was happening. I had the CEO of the company run downstairs along with so many other individuals. I was just finished work. And whilst I was there in that moment, after I had collapsed, I was in and out of consciousness. So I didn't really understand what was happening except that the fact that I had just fallen and that was it. I remember the ambulance journey. The ambulance came and I was on my way to Oxford. That journey was unbelievable because I was in and out of consciousness. And whilst I was there, I was then told that I had just had a heart attack. And it was quite confusing for them because I was 25.
A heart attack at the age of 25. It's
Absolutely.
Not something common.
And it was more the fact that I didn't really have any other symptoms to show for it before that. So I was in hospital. They were incredibly confused because, they didn't really understand what was happening. They did various tests and angiogram, and that all showed that it wasn't a normal heart attack. So I was there for 4 months in hospital doing loads of different tests with various different teams. And I was then diagnosed with a rare autoimmune disease called Churg-Strauss syndrome, which affects your blood vessels and can affect other organs in your body. And even that diagnosis was a huge surprise for us because you always think growing up, as well as, everyday life, that you'll never hear anything like that or never experience anything like that. And so the couple of years went by, I was in and out of hospital. And then I thought that life was getting a bit better. Although the first one kind of shapes you. And it kind of made me feel like I didn't really understand what was happening. Life seemed very different. I didn't really want to go back to my old life anymore.
That's an interesting thing.
Yeah.
So there was that shift happening within you during these 4 months at the hospital, before or after, or during the incident itself. When did you start feeling that shift?
So whilst I was in hospital, I was asking myself so many different questions. Why did this happen? It wasn't the sense of why me, but why did this happen, and how can I go from living a normal life from what I thought was a normal life to then being told that I'll have over 20 tablets a day, chemotherapy, immunotherapy, for the rest of my life. And the things that I used to do, I cannot do anymore. So it was a bit of, it was confusing for me because I assumed that I lived a life that everybody was living. I wasn't doing anything else that was, abnormal, so to speak. But a couple of years went past, and I assumed that life was getting better. And then when I was 27, I then experienced a cardiac arrest while sitting at home. My then girlfriend, now wife, who essentially saved my life. I was walking up the stairs at night, in the evening, and something didn't feel right, and I didn't sit well with myself. So I walked up the stairs and said, I'm going to go to bed, which for her was incredibly confusing. Walked up the stairs and I actually fell back onto the stairs.
Oh my God.
So if you could have just imagined me lying down the stairs with my head facing the opposite end, and she had to give me CPR on the stairs. So I don't want to get too graphic, but it was a moment where, she was on the phone to the paramedics, etc. And my parents, my siblings then came. My dad had to drag me down and continue CPR. So long story short, I then suffered 3 cardiac arrests in total. I was then put into an induced coma in the ICU. At that moment, they told my family that I had less than 5% chance of surviving, and that if I did survive, I would be brain dead, essentially. So it was a moment for them to kind of understand what's happening, the best way to kind of go and navigate things. And like I said, my wife at that point, essentially saved my life with the CPR that she gave me, as well as my dad followed on. And then what they experienced in hospital was that they didn't really understand the condition that I had, because it was quite rare. So then my wife had to call Oxford, the specialists, to be able to get involved. And that was when things slowly, they had to send chemotherapy into the hospital. And I was in an induced coma for a couple of weeks. And life was very different whilst I was in there.
That's so true. We take life for granted many times, and then we assume that we have enough time to do so many things. And sometimes we need these big incidents to just realize what life is.
Right.
And I would say, on our life journey, I always wonder, do we need these big hits in life to make the changes required and to start living life for what it has to offer? So tell me a bit, how did it shift not only you, your family, and people around you? How did this experience shift the way they look at life and the way you look at life?
Really good question, because like you said, we take things for granted. We take life for granted. And I think, there's been a massive shift with my family, with my parents. My parents grew up and are religious, right? So we look at things, everybody looks at things in a very different way. What's the purpose? What are we doing here? Why do we do things? And, and what I can say is that me and my family have a completely different outlook on life now, where it's not necessarily that we don't look at struggle or pain or anything like that, but it's more focused on the good things in life. Everything that we already have around us. Why not amplify the feelings of gratitude that we already have, rather than constantly creating scenarios in our mind of the things that we don't have, or the things that haven't even happened, which do a lot of damage to us, from what I've learned in my own life. So massive shifts in terms of the outlook, I would say, and as well as that, more about the self. We take ourselves for granted. We take ourselves for granted for the fact that we are who we are, because we always want more, but we are already enough. And
it's so beautiful. We are already enough. I mean, how much do we struggle, all of us, to understand that we do not need to play any role to be enough?
Absolutely.
How did that shape your identity?
So look, identity for me is incredibly important now, because I lived a life of chase, I would say. I was working every day, and all I knew was hard work, chase, earn money, do this, work hard, play hard kind of thing. That was my mentality back in my 20s growing up. And we've watched our parents grow up. So inevitably we assume that that's what we have to do, working multiple jobs, etc. And when I was experiencing all of the things that I experienced, the one thing that kind of changed everything for me was, who do I want to be? Who is it that I want to be, and who is it that I'm going to almost play as my character? Because what I found was, speaking to so many people who had health, complications and obstacles, was that we sit on them and we tell them that story like that we owe our medical condition something. And for me, it was like, well, I don't want my life to be like that. I don't want to have children, them knowing that I'm an individual who unfortunately went through something and now I have this for the rest of my life. I wanted to shape that. And for me, I had to completely change my identity. I had to completely change from what I believed to be true. I had to completely change who I thought I was. And I had to change what I thought I was capable of.
I agree. Because in many ways, the way we're shaped by society, the way we are shaped and conditioned to lose our authenticity on behalf of the need for attachment. And Dr. Gabor Mate speaks about it very beautifully. And he speaks about the reasons and the root cause of autoimmune disease. And he links it to the loss of authenticity. And I think we are all invited at different stages of our life to reconnect with that authenticity.
Absolutely.
When we realize, as you just said, that the bucket list or the targets that we had are not necessarily what brings happiness to us. And I would say gratefulness is one of the key words you've just used, because lots of therapies nowadays are really centered on gratefulness, even with Dr. Joe Dispenza, who healed himself physically through the accident he had, etc. The way he uses the heart, the gratefulness, the power of gratefulness to spread it, to bring healing. So you're spot on. How grateful are we about our life defines a lot about our philosophy and our approach to things.
For sure. I think the way I've seen things shape, and I continue to see it every single day, the fact that you said authenticity is a huge thing, because we've kind of forgotten who we are. And the reason we've forgotten who we are is because we allow society or people around us or the things that we see as problems to shape us. But the problem is that we don't really actually take time to understand ourselves anymore. And we constantly want to learn more. And the way I describe it is we're constantly learning more and adding more layers on. But we should be doing the reverse and taking these layers off. Because like you said, you lose your authenticity, and that the authenticity is the frequency that I go with every single day, because I am who I am, and that's enough. And everybody else is who they are. But the thing is, we're shaped by the things that we are not, and they are the things that they're the problems that occur more so in our lives.
Exactly, because it becomes a story.
Yes.
And I've seen with my clients, the most difficult part of therapy is to let go of a story.
Absolutely.
A story we made up around health, a story we made up around a relationship, about anything where we're stuck.
For sure.
And I think this is why questioning the story initially and seeing how did those beliefs that, we grew up shaping create the reality we're currently living. And honestly, when you speak about authenticity, what comes to me is this campaign, Let's Get Real to Heal, because it came from a need from within to tell the world that what you're seeing on social media is not helping healing. What we're portraying as in being the actual life is not necessarily what goes on beyond the walls and in people's life. And on top, I think healing physically has to come with a reconnection with the authentic self to create what we call coherence between mind, body, soul, mission, meaning. So when these align, then, healing happens. So looking at that perspective, because you've been through rehabilitation and you had to come back from that, I would say, limit between death and life, and you've been given that chance. So how did the power of your mind help you this time, not to shape beliefs on autopilot, but how did they help you to expedite your healing or to come back stronger?
So, similar to you, right? I've always been a person to question, because I know that you like to look into things deeper than the normal person, which we have to. right? And the reason I say that is because when I was in that moment, I didn't really know what to expect anymore, because I had people around me who were telling me that I can't do this and I can't do that and I can't do this. And I've always been the child or the teen who would always be curious. And my curiosity led me to, being sent out of classrooms, or not being liked by managers or, my bosses, etc. But I've always been curious as to ask why or what if. And those questions have led me to where I am today. Because if I accepted everything that I was told, especially whilst I was in hospital, I don't think that I would be the person that I am today. And this is, I adore everybody that was around me, whilst I was in my hospital journey, because they're absolute, they're amazing people who take care of you and look after you and nurture you whilst you need it. And I'm truly grateful for that. However, it's down to ourselves. Because whilst I remember lying in the hospital bed, I also had we always have this voice in our head. And that voice in our head is what controls us and takes direction of the things that we do in life. So I started questioning that voice, and I didn't want to listen to it anymore. And that was a real turning point for me. What I didn't know that I was doing at that moment was I was reshaping my own belief system. And through reshaping my own belief system, I was able to do the things that either I was told that I wouldn't be able to do much quicker, and shape things for my own life the way I wanted to see them. And through my own studying, through meeting various people on my journey, I now know what I was doing. And I like to try to tell every individual who wants to heal, essentially, that you can. But you must first believe it. But the belief system, unfortunately, isn't always easy to shape, just like we want it to. But it was that moment where I thought, I know that I can change. And I knew that I was capable of more. And there are so many stories of people that I have healed or healing. And I know that we all have that power to do it. That was my kind of turning point with things.
I agree that reshaping who you want to be through your belief system by questioning your self-limiting beliefs and understanding if it is working for your own benefit to boost your healing, or it is pulling you back subconsciously. And I think this is where, when we speak about health coaching, and this is what I do at PhiloLife, is mostly bringing more awareness to the fact that if you get a certain disease activated, and I would say activated because of so many baggage we carry, and the immune system not being able to contain it, and then it triggers what the DNA has been carrying.
Yeah.
So if we are in a situation where we have a physical disease, it's our responsibility to prepare the environment.
Absolutely.
And when I say environment, is internal as much as I say external, for post-recovery. Even if you take your treatment, you cannot go back to what triggered it.
No.
So you need to work on it. So whether it is for prevention or for treatment, during treatment or post-treatment, we have to do that emotional, internal questioning. Mm-hmm. And I think maybe because I come from a philosophical background, and philosophical counseling is more about asking the right questions, I would say it's just through questioning our philosophy, or what we call Weltanschauung in German, the way you perceive the world, you're able to expedite your healing, or prepare the grounds for a return, or prevent it. Now, my question to you is, did you feel any signs or symptoms before your heart attacks that you ignored deep down? Or how were you living your life before that?
So, look, I was a 25-year-old who was working nonstop, and I had the mentality of work hard, play hard, just like so many people do. You work hard, you play hard, you do so many hours, you sacrifice your weekends, you earn money, and that's it. What I can say is I wasn't living the best life, but I've always been an individual who wants to always know more. And I know that things didn't feel right. I didn't feel right within myself. So I had symptoms such as asthma, but when I'd go, to get seen. Unfortunately, I was young, fit and healthy at that point. So there wasn't many tests because you don't really suspect that you have an autoimmune disease or a heart attack's going to happen. So the symptoms, for example, were mild, I would say. But what I would say is that I didn't live the life that I knew that I was supposed to live. When I look back from where I am today to how I used to live, what I can honestly admit is that I was not living a life for myself, but I was living a life for others. And I truly believe that with so many things, that the way I was doing things, my lifestyle, my eating habits and my normal habits, etc., they were shaped for others and not for myself. And unfortunately, because I lost myself in that journey, ultimately something had to happen for that wake-up call to happen.
And how did it change you on a career level, on your vision of what you wanted to do in life, your life mission? So how did that shift you career-wise?
I have always been a person who loves speaking with people. I've always been a people person. I love speaking with people. I love understanding people's stories, etc. And the way I used to view life then is very different to how I view it now. I want to be able to give as much back as I've learned and I continue to learn, because life is about community. And when you build others, you build yourself with it. So the career aspect changed quite quickly, to be honest with you. I no longer really wanted to, be a 9-to-5 individual and working for somebody. I wanted to create something. And we're all creative beings. We all have the power to be able to create and do the things that we want to do. So what I wanted to do was shape lives. I wanted to help. And I wanted to offer as much as I possibly can. Now, every single day I'm learning. If I don't learn something every day, then something's happened that day. Something's not right that day. And so, for example, my life now is very much giving back to individuals that I can help. And I work for myself, which is great. And I'm able to help people get results. Not necessarily just results in terms of financially, but finding themselves again who they truly are.
So if I would ask you, just for the audience to understand, what do you currently do, Ravi?
So I am a performance coach, and I work with business owners, entrepreneurs, and I also work with teams and leadership teams. So what we do is we essentially help you get the results that you want to get. Yes, a lot of it into the corporate world and the business world is financial. But essentially what we're doing is we're unraveling who you are to be able to get those results using habits, using the power of your mind, and using the things that we know are available to us. And this is the reason why, for example, so many sales training doesn't work. We have trainings and we forget about it in a week. I mean, you know exactly how the mind works, and that's the reason why we don't learn, or we're not able to make use of it. So we go back to the core and we instill new habits. We instill a new system inside you in order for results to be natural, for clients to be natural, because all those things are possible for absolutely everybody. I also have a executive headhunting business as well, where we work alongside organizations to help them recruit. And what we also do in hand with that is a leadership training.
So how did that finding through whatever you've been through on a physical level about the need for you to be true to yourself and the need for authenticity, how did you translate it into the corporate world, and how does that need of authenticity transform leadership?
So we as beings are forms of habits, right? We are conditioned to know and believe what we conditioned to know and believe. And the reason why we see so many different results in individuals and teams is because of their own conditioning. Now, trying to explain that to leadership teams isn't the easiest, but they understand it when they do a certain program. And we've seen change quite quickly, because what happens is we are just programmed to believe what we believe. Some of us have been brought up to know that our parents have worked hard. So essentially we instilled in our own minds that working hard is the only thing that we have to do. On the other hand, some people have watched our parents not work so hard, have businesses, extremely successful. So then they are conditioned to a completely different reality where they don't need to work hard anymore because they're now little bit more creative than others. And these two individuals will grow up very differently, doing different things with different results. So what we're saying is, if we can unravel all of the things that you already know and instill something that you do want to know with the things that you want to see, then everything around you starts changing. And I've lived through that transformation myself. I was the type of person, if you met me 10, 15 years ago, to say, no, not for me, not for me. And I had to live through the transformation to see it. Because through my own health obstacles and then through business, I've been doing this work every single day, and I've never looked back since. I see some of the, my doctors or individuals from the UK who you look at me sometimes and think, we can't believe that you went through that, because you just don't look like somebody who's ever been through anything, and that is by design. I've done this deliberately because I want everybody to know that
it's
they can do anything.
It's a way to honor life.
Absolutely.
It's a way to honor that second chance you got and not take it lightly.
Yeah.
And I would say that when we speak about leadership, lots of leaders fall into the story that has been told to them about who they should become and how to operate. And that's why lots of them fail in their mission. So I think finding that balance where a leader can be himself and not deny who he is just to play that role, I think is very important in the journey. So how much do you see of a difference when a leader embraces his authenticity and how his relationships is shaped with his employee?
Yeah. So the first thing is who you are versus who you think you are. They are two very, very different people.
That's very beautiful.
And when we talk about identity, I'm a different person around my wife. I'm a different person around my daughter. I'm a different person when I'm coaching a client. I'm a different person sitting down with a leader. They're forms of identity, yet still my authentic self in a very different way.
That's where you need to keep the coherence in everything you do. Otherwise,
Absolutely.
You'll be schizophrenic.
Unfortunately, majority, I don't want to say majority, but a lot of leaders have been put into a role where the expectations are high. And when expectations are high, you automatically think that you have to become somebody else, right? And you lose your authentic self. So then how can we get ourselves authentically to the level where expectations are normal for us? And that's the gap that unfortunately a lot of people don't want to talk about. But that is the gap. Once you fill that gap, you never go back. Because essentially what you're doing is you are who you are. You've become your natural self, but you've done it without what everybody expects you to be or know or how to do things. So the authenticity, the identity things go hand in hand. And we have watched leaders completely change their outlook on life, the way they see their day-to-day roles, because you become the stress of things diminish slowly, and you're able to do things in a very natural way rather than forcing. And this is the thing that I talk a lot about with the push and pull. We didn't come here to force anything. We came here to be magnetic. We came here to be able to attract whatever we want, live in harmony. We put all the stresses on ourselves. So then when we become ourselves, like you mentioned, the authentic self, and actually who you are, that's when things start changing.
Because authenticity automatically means more flowing.
For sure.
Less embodying what we are not. And it leads to more efficiency when it comes to productivity, and less burnout, which is more of health. So this is why ultimately when we heal, it's not we only heal ourselves physically and emotionally. We heal pattern, we heal generational patterns.
Absolutely.
When it comes to money, beliefs, and we open the doors to a higher dimension of knowledge, and then things flow much easier.
I love that.
So if I want to tell you, like, if there is one message you would want to give to people who are living on survival mode, because actually we've gone through a war,
Yeah.
and we felt safe, and we are really grateful, especially for the UAE, for the way
sure.
it handled it, because it gave us a sense of safety. It still gives us a sense of safety, but the nervous system can also question and sometimes doesn't believe what it hears. So this is why we are, most of the times, kind of like questioning the uncertainty. Despite that, as human beings, we know that part of the game of being a human being is to not know what's coming up.
Yeah.
And we know that anxiety comes from the uncertainty, the questioning of the uncertainty. But I would say lots of people actually are living on survival mode. And this is affecting their health and their long-term health, not necessarily today. But being through what you've been at in a young age, what would be the message that you would like to send?
Firstly, I'm glad you brought that up, because a lot of people don't really talk about the nervous system, right? And you know, when I explain the nervous system, it's a crazy thing, and it shapes you. And I'm just going to quickly mention something that I speak to about my clients, and I ask them, you know, when you receive a big lump, for example, a big payout or a big bonus or anything like that, what happens? Your body gets an excitement. The hairs on your arm start standing up, right? That's your nervous system waking up. Now, we might feel happy in that moment, but what's actually happening is our nervous system is saying, this is not safe. I don't know what this feels like, right? And this is why so many people kind of feel like they're going forwards, but then gets to take a step back, right? Because their body and their mind is aligned, and they're not allowed to go or move forward because something's kind of pulling them back. And that is our nervous system and our subconscious. So the message I would have is, you can change, you can regulate, but it has to be done when you identify the things that you need to actually face on and have that conversation about. Because things that we are uncertain about, we create scenarios in our mind, and our nervous system plays a huge part of that. And we have to learn to be able to look after our bodies and our minds in a way that we've never done before. This is our avatar. The way I, especially, you know, with individuals that I work with, the one thing that I say all the time is, you are, let's say, for example, your own character. If your character was in a game and you wanted the best life for this character, what are you going to do? How are you going to feed this character? Is this character going to go to sleep early or late? Is this person going to meditate? Is this person going to think positive thoughts? Is this person going to be in a community? What is this person going to do? When you start asking these questions, what happens is that your mind will start playing scenarios in your own mind of the things that you shouldn't be doing, right? And all of those things are going to help you be in more of a relaxed state to be able to change. So if you look at yourself and your own character and you ask these questions, that's when you can start creating change. And when you create change, slowly but surely your body will start changing with it, and your nervous system will regulate. There are various different ways, like breath work, for example, that I do every single day, which has helped me massively, you know, since being diagnosed and everything, you know, all the health obstacles that I've had. I didn't know how much meditation and breath work would completely change my life.
I mean, regulating the nervous system is key to everything. I wouldn't say that stress doesn't have benefits sometimes. A bit of stress or a certain stressful situation can push us to be creative, can push us to achieve. The problem is not having stress, because nobody can live without a certain stress. There will always be something or the other, but it's how to manage that stress. Yeah. So it always stays within the limits so that we can manage it and grow with it and learn from the situations. And I would say it's about the philosophy again.
Yeah.
And I do believe that if you transform your philosophy, you transform your life and your nervous system. Because if you take every single situation that happens to you as in meant for you, and you accept it and learn from it then you're not worried anymore that something bad is going to happen to you. And then your nervous system starts learning that whatever comes my way, I've attracted it somehow.
Yeah, for sure.
So either I learn from it or I just use it for my own benefits. So it becomes less stressful to live. And I think it's more about that philosophy that we've created.
You're absolutely right.
Through history, where we feel always attacked from the outside. So learning to feel safe within your body and learning to transform the way you look at life can regulate your nervous system as well. Add to it breath work,
for sure,
meditation, and lots of other things.
For sure.
But the shift has to start within.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm glad that you said that, because that's when change happens. You know, like when you talk about coherence, etc., it's about responding rather than reacting. If we're going to live a life with just reacting, your body and your mind are going to be all over the place because you're creating scenarios. Whereas if you're learning to respond, what happens is you ask yourself certain questions, your nervous system slowly gets regulated through those questions. So for example, if you see something happen in front of you, if you react to it or you question the same thing that you see, then you can activate different parts of your body. This is why two different people can see the same thing but have two different perspectives, depending on how they react or how they respond.
We have different mind maps, and that results in the fact that the same situation is lived differently from different people. And this is why at the end we do say that it's more about accepting the journey and then widening our horizons to see how do we want to live it, and allow ourselves to ask, what can I do today at this point of time to have a different outcome? Because as Einstein says, repeating the same pattern and expecting different outcomes is insanity. I'm just paraphrasing.
Yeah, you're right.
But at the end, I would say, what message deep down would you hold for the audience? And I read a beautiful sentence you've written on your biography at the end, that the way people believe themselves. Would you like to share that?
I can't actually remember what I put now.
Really? Oh gosh.
Unfortunately. But it's more about kind of perspective.
Yeah.
I would say. The way you see yourself is the way others perceive you.
Yes.
And it's loads of these things that I'm mentioning today have completely shaped my life. People like Bob Proctor that I grew up watching, and I ended up being coached by one of his team members, one of his consultants, and it completely changed my life. It completely changed my life because it activated different parts of my mind. And that's when I mean, we know what the word perspective means, but we don't use it or think about it. And that's the reason why I say, you know, two different people looking at the same thing have different reactions, responses, as well as different answers about the same thing. And that's simply because of our conditioning, you know. And perceiving perspective has completely changed everything for me, because I've learned to look at things not from just through my eyes, but what's the best case scenario here, right? We normally make decisions, and majority of us are constantly making decisions from our own conditioning, from the things that we are, you know, brought up with. And this is why so many business owners, for example, it takes them so long to be able to get to where they want to get to, because they're just making decisions. Some of these guys that I've worked with have made decisions from childhood memories. Do you get what I mean?
Yes, and I agree. It shapes a lot.
For sure.
I mean, because sometimes people think that coming for therapy is for physical or emotional breakdowns or physical dis-ease or whatever we want to call it. But at the end, even if we're blocked money-wise, we have to see how is our subconscious mind programmed, and what limitations have we brought onto the table.
For sure.
And I think, again, the subconscious, the work that you do with the corporate background as well, digging into the subconscious to bring to light the program that is running the autopilot mode is very important, and is very essential for people to break that limitations and break that chains and be who they want to be.
For sure. And I didn't even know what the subconscious was before.
Yeah,
you know, 10 years ago, I didn't even know what it was.
Yeah.
So, you know, it completely, when I started to find out, I never went back.
Yeah, it's a journey.
Yeah.
I'm glad to have you here,
Thank you so
Ravi.
much.
It's an honor to have you open up about your personal life and about your journey and story, because at the end, if we're not real and we don't step and share our journeys, then we lose the opportunity to maybe become messengers for others in
Yeah.
different ways. Thank you, Ravi.
Thank you so much for having me.
What a powerful conversation. What stands out to me is this: healing is not just about what happens to us, it's about how we meet those moments internally. It's about the identity we choose to step into, the patterns we become aware of, and the relationship we build with our body and ourselves. If this conversation resonated with you, take a moment to reflect on where you might still be in survival mode and what would it mean for you to shift into alignment. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear this today. And if you want to stay connected and support the movement, follow us on Instagram at Let's Get Real to Heal and be part of the community. You can also connect with Ravi directly. We will have the details in the description and explore what he offers. Thank you for being here, and as always, let's get real to heal.